isolation, pain, torture, suppression. When you haven't experienced them firsthand, they don't seem as real or serious as they actually are. For the prisoners of the Vietnam War, these seemed to be really real and serious. Not only did they experience all three of them, they had the strength to survive it. One well-known prisoner of war that we know is the late John McCain, who ran for president and was a U.S. senator, a famous politician. He spoke about his experiences as a prisoner of war without a filter. He spoke about it extensively, even. He told of 3 different ways that he survived his experience as a prisoner of war, through his strength physically, mentally, and spiritually. Physically, he had a hard time surviving in general. He was physically pretty strong, but at the same time, he really wasn't. He shouldn't have survived the initial crash landing, but he managed to get through it with only a broken arm and a broken leg. When they caught him, they refused him treatment outright, mostly because he, as a prisoner of war, he had information that they wanted military-wise. And he kept withholding that information, just saying his name, his rank, his serial number, and his date of birth. But then, at the same time, 2 things happened. First, McCain realized that if he didn't get treatment for his leg, he was not going to survive. Remembering about a gentleman that he trained with who fell and broke his leg and ended up dying from lead poisoning in his leg. John McCain's leg at this point, specifically his knee, had swollen up to the size, color, and shape of a football. When he realized this, the Vietnamese realized at the same time that he was a son of a famous military officer. The Vietnamese didn't quite realize what this meant in American culture. They referenced it to their culture and thought, oh hey, this guy must be royalty. He really wasn't, but John McCain didn't tell him that. He just went with it, and it helped him survive through his ordeal. Mentally, it's unhealthy for people not to interact or keep themselves occupied. He knew this, and one of the things he did to help him keep himself occupied was that he would remember history that he had learned, and he would think about political debates and political actions and think about how he would have done things and if those political actions would have a positive or negative effect on the country that he was working for. In the camp that he was in, they weren't supposed to communicate, but he didn't let that stop him. And since he was the son of a military official, it was more like when they caught him, it was a little bit of a slap on the hand saying, don't you do that. But he didn't really get the worst punishment in the world for it versus other prisoners who got worse punishments. One of the things that he had to learn how to do that he remembered how to do was Morse code, which is exemplified on the screen right here. He would communicate with other prisoners with Morse code. Eventually, there was a prisoner that was brought in. He didn't know who it was at first, but then he started trying to communicate with him. One way that he communicated with prisoners that he was nearby was tapping out a code. It wasn't Morse code, it was actually a lyric from a song. It went like this. And they would respond with when it was safe. He did this with the gentleman that had been brought in. And when it came to the point where he had a cup, which he would drink out of, and the gentleman was by the wall of the cell that they shared, or by the wall they shared in their cells, McCain would put the cup against the wall and speak into it. And you could actually hear the voices through the wall by using this cup. When the gentleman on the other side of the wall realized that, he only said 3 words before bursting out crying. I'm Ernie Brace. Being able to communicate that meant a lot to him. And it took a few weeks to communicate properly from there, but eventually they managed to do it. Spiritually, being a prisoner can be really disheartening. Most prisoners probably gave up on their faith, whereas others strengthened their faith through prayer and worship. There was a time where John McCain, through prayer, asked for a few things. He didn't ask for like wisdom or better health for his family. Instead, he asked for courage and strength and mental stability to get through what he was going through. Another thing that happened when they were at Camp Vegas, I believe it was called, it's a lot of the prisoners would dub what camps or the military officials with names to try to keep track of everyone. This one was called Camp Vegas. There was 335 prisoners in Camp Vegas, all separated into groups of seven groups for the 335 prisoners. At one point, they got sick and tired of the Vietnamese soldiers not letting them congregate to have church. And one Sunday, they decided to say, screw it, we're going to do it anyway. So they met in the courtyard one Sunday morning and proceeded to have their church service. And the Vietnamese soldiers thought they were rioting and immediately just cut them off, said, nope, we're not doing that. And they took about 35 people, 5 to 6 people from each group, and separated them from the others to try to prevent that from happening again. It's unclear whether McCain was one of them, but considering how detailed his description of the punishment was, it's highly possible that he was one of those people that was separated. It wasn't until after his release that McCain spoke about his extensive experiences on how he survived as a prisoner of the Vietnam War. Of everything he spoke about to the U.S. News on January 28, 2008, I decided to pick out these stories from what he spoke about to show how he survived his ordeal as a prisoner.